like cake mixes and cookware, electricity and minced onions. These were things you had to be sold on.
Propaganda. What goes through your head when you hear that word? Footage of Goebbels, Soviet movies, North Korean news, Al Jazeera, Fox News coverage of the Iraq War, MSNBC's coverage of the 2016 election, Sean Hannity's coverage of Trump rallies, CNN, BBC. I guess all of you said yes to one of these, which really just shows one thing. All media that attempts to convey a message and tries to guide you into a political position or to get you to buy a product is propaganda. Prior to the Second World War, propaganda is just what we called media. It got its negative connotation from the war and specifically from those who used it. There are many aspects to propaganda, many forms, shapes, ideas and concepts, but there is one thing most associated with it that will be the centerpiece of this video: dishonesty. We all associate dishonesty with propaganda, that you are being lied to, and realizing that you have been lied to is a deeply uncomfortable experience. People tend to react emotionally and consequently irrational, and the past decades have been a time throughout which truths that we saw as granted have been revealed to be lies. Both our political leadership and press have throughout recent years failed to keep up a standard of honesty. And it was on the internet where the main profiteers of an establishment failure are to be found. People who felt lied to or lied about ran in droves to those who proclaimed to be honest and different from those who had lied to them. A great amount of the credibility held by several alternative news outlets and personalities on YouTube and other platforms is built upon a promise of honesty, or at the very least, the perception that they may be honest. However, also on the assumption of honesty by those who view them, and that assumption, that attitude of good faith in the honesty of someone with an agenda, is in my opinion one of the most ridiculous aspects of human behavior out there. Because it is that assumption that those in position of authority won't lie to us, which drives us into outrage when we are being lied to, but also drives us directly into the arms of those who lie to us and count on us not questioning their lies. This series of videos will be about people who profited from the lies of others and positioned themselves as the honest apostles of truth. Black Pigeon Speaks is a right-wing commentary and news channel, whose videos mainly stand out due to their flashy graphics and the use of well-made animations and a distinctive style. His videos often cover the topics of a supposed decline of Western civilization taking place in Europe and North America, brought on by secularism, liberalism and immigration, as well as some supposed sinister force trying to guide and disrupt our societies from the shadows. There is, however, something that I would encourage you to do concerning his videos.
This is the future that the financial, political, and media class, along with the censorious large tech companies, have chosen.
I am aware that the vast majority of women, when raped, reach sexual climax in matters that pertain to the safety of a nation, then that nation will die.
So as to eliminate national differences, we are already living in interesting times. They're just about to get a whole lot more interesting.
Which is to listen to what he has to say, rather than merely watch what he shows. You will notice that there is a ton of claims being made. Statements of fact that are rattled down like a machine gun and provide the basis of his argumentation. And this is where the first issue with Black Pigeon Speaks comes up. The facts he claims to be true, and upon which he bases his political interpretations of interactions within society on, are not true. I've watched about 20 or even more of his videos over the course of a long time, pausing whenever he made a statement of fact and searching if it is based in reality. In his video Why Women Destroy Civilization and Other Uncomfortable Truths, He claims at 9 minutes and 50 seconds that 87% of female rape victims have an orgasm during rape. It's portrayed as if the source is MSNBC. However, that's actually a troll post from some forum, and the study that supposedly proves this doesn't exist. In his video, Canada, the post-Western non-binary nation, he claims at 6 minutes and 20 seconds that the Canadian Supreme Court made a decision that statements of fact can be banned as hate speech. In fact, the court ruled that a Christian fanatic who harassed a gay high school teacher by picketing the school he worked at could not be charged with hate speech. In CNN is losing the meme war. At 1 minute and 20 seconds, he claims universities only produce graduates with gender studies, sociology, and other worthless degrees. However, a search through the data provided by the National Center of Education Statistics in the United States will show you that the majority of graduates from US colleges and universities graduate with degrees in business, medical fields, and law. At 1 minute and 44 seconds, he claims that the New York Times officially apologized for producing fake news and stories that were untrue. However, when you look up that piece, you will find that it actually is an essay by the executive editor doubling down and insisting that their paper does not produce fake news and false narratives. At 1 minute and 47 seconds, he claims that the New York Times is on a steep decline in numbers and subscriptions. However, in reality, the paper is growing in numbers. In Fake News Agenda and the US government's new propaganda, at 7 minutes and 8 seconds, he claims that the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act is a bill designed to restrict free speech in the United States by clamping down on hate speech as defined by the US government and the left. At 9 minutes and 7 seconds, he claims that the bill will give left-wing think tanks the authority to shut down social media sites and YouTube channels that produce content that runs contrary to government and left-wing narratives. However, the bill in reality is designed to counter foreign-produced propaganda that is being spread within the United States, be it from the Chinese, Russian, or Gulf state-owned media corporations, by giving money to think tanks to produce counter-propaganda that confronts narratives spread by such foreign media institutions. In the dangerous precedent of unbridled charity, he claims that the survivors of the Grenfell Tower tragedy are being rehoused in luxury apartments worth £8.5 million. However, £8.5 million is in reality the price of the most valuable apartment of that part of London, which the survivors didn't receive. In Antifa, media-backed terrorists, at 2 minutes and 21 seconds, he claims that the Charlottesville incident was the fault of Antifa. At 6 minutes and 11 seconds, he claims that leftist Kurdish militia members who fight against ISIS and are holding and posing with an Antifa flag are in fact ISIS fighters. At 6 minutes, he claims there is a massive media campaign to support a violent Antifa group. However, there is no media support of the fundraiser he cites, or at least as far as I have yet to see. And that group barely raised $176. In the video, Britain abolishes itself. At 4 minutes and 2 seconds, he claims that the homicide rate of London has overtaken the homicide rate of New York. In reality, the homicide rates in both cities are declining. The homicide rate in New York is, however, declining faster than the homicide rate of London. And this video provides a very good example of how the distortion of reality by Black Pigeon Speaks creates narratives that sound compelling to a viewer, are however completely untrue. At 2 minutes and 3 seconds, he claims a senior British Conservative figure made a statement that Britain was turning into a one-party state due to a change in demographics. Throughout the video, he keeps mentioning this elusive Tory politician, at 5 minutes 19 seconds referencing him as Lord Cooper Windrush, and at 5 minutes 47 seconds references that he is talking about a Windrush scandal. The problem is that as much as it may be compelling as a right-wing narrative to have a conservative politician named Windrush get into trouble for arguing over the supposed threat to democracy through changing demographics in what became known as a Windrush scandal, the entire story doesn't make any sense. Lord Cooper Windrush is a former member of the SDP who went to work for the Tory party as a pollster for David Cameron. We couldn't find any evidence of him ever saying what Black Pigeon Speaks claims he said. And the Windrush scandal? It was a scandal about the Windrush migrants, who are immigrants predominantly from Jamaica, the Bahamas, and other former British colonies in the Caribbean that came to Britain in the 1950s. The British authorities failed to properly process them in the 1950s, and therefore several who had lived in the United Kingdom for up to 60 years had been wrongfully imprisoned and even deported. Cooper Windrush merely briefly got into hot water for calling communities that don't vote Conservative hostile. The Windrush scandal is merely given as an example of what kind of Tory failures can make communities hostile towards the Conservatives. Black Pigeon Speaks lies almost constantly every few minutes in his videos, and too often to merely be unintentional, as he builds his political narratives, interpretations and predictions on the foundation of these untruths. Untruths that help substantially in forming the political narratives he wishes you to believe, of a corrupt and declining media controlled by conspiratorial influences, pending doom through demographic change brought upon the Western world by a conspiracy, or just small statements and little factoids that supposedly provide a core of evidence for his claims, which, however, turn out to be untrue. All of this leads us to an important aspect about what he does. It is easy not to question what is presented in flashy animations. It's all shiny and well polished. This sleek presentation easily entices to watch and be seduced into merely listening with asking few questions, if any at all. There is something curious but also scary about this. Through the repeated lying, omitting of facts, and consequent creation of narratives not founded or constrained by reality, Black Pigeon Speaks has created an alternative reality.
Mob rule, aristocratic class, and replaced our overlords with the mercantile. There are many that celebrate the population replacement currently going on in Germany and around the entire life that are calculated to bring about their physical and cultural destruction. The destruction of national sovereignty. All Western nations simultaneously for all of the world to come to replace their population on state handouts.
A separate political world, run by completely different political rules and modes of operation. A world in which the viewer, after being sucked in, no longer needs to confront himself with reality, but can safely nestle and cuddle up in a collectivized, distorted, paranoid delusion. And in this world of distorted reality, not bound by the rules of reality, everything is possible and everything is true as long as it is presented as true. As mentioned before, by not mentioning the alt-right in any way, let alone the purpose and attitude with which they appeared and organized themselves during their event at Charlottesville, the riots and the murder that was committed there are suddenly blamed on the left in his reality. The Grenfell Tower fire, a horrible disaster caused by the city council not conducting appropriate measures to protect the residents from such a fire, is suddenly part of a charity scam organized by migrants. ISIS suddenly supports Antifa. A successful newspaper is suddenly at the verge of bankruptcy. And many more narratives are spun, detached from reality. In this alternative reality, reality and the online world become completely disconjointed and shambled together and apart into a weird construct that doesn't even make sense. In Twitter, Destroyers of Intellectual Heresy, he proclaims that a YouTuber by the name Millennial Woes was the victim of political censorship and political correctness after getting banned from Twitter. He claims that Millennial Woes is a right-wing to center political commentator who merely expressed his opposition to globalism. In reality, though, things are a little bit different.
It's the most extreme right-wing position you hold. I think I'm pro-slavery.
Millennial Woes is a white nationalist who, when not ranting over the supposed peril facing the white race and Jewish conspiracies, tells black people on Twitter that he doesn't speak jungle. In the since-deleted video, Why the West Hates and is Destroying Itself, the Second World War is portrayed as a struggle to crush the German national spirit rather than the struggle against fascism that it actually was, and that the world emerging from the end of the Second World War is the true evil of the conflict. In many ways, what Black Pigeon Speaks almost becomes self-satire. In the video titled The Endgame, Why the West is Lost, a dramatic title that hypes up expectations of a horrendous threat to society, the video proclaims that a crazy woman who had a sex change for her dog, bug-chasing creeps, and Miley Cyrus performances are causing a collapse of Western civilization. Take a step back and look at this from a real-world lens, detached from online culture and internet conversations. A dog, a creep, and a pop singer, you will gradually realize how absolutely ridiculous this claim is. I believe Black Pigeon Speaks is aware that he has created an alternative reality, which he must protect. One of the reasons I believe this to be the case is the footage he uses for his flashy animations. When talking about migrants, he shows images of menacing, rioting Africans. He takes special care of which demeanor the people he speaks negatively of display in comparison to those he speaks positively of. But far more telling is that whenever he shows a supposed news article, he blurs it, thereby making it just readable, with the exception of the small print. He doesn't always list them in the description, and you don't see if it is a reputable publication. However, that parallel reality created has in itself more to it than you think, and is not just a mere bubble. There's a science to what Black Pigeon does, an explanation, a method. In an experiment conducted by Craig Anderson in 1980, two groups of people were separated into two different lecture rooms and given false information. They were told that they were part of an experiment and then given two different lectures. One was being told that people who are high risk takers tend to be better firefighters. The other group was told that people who are risk adverse make better firefighters. The groups were then asked to find explanations and a theory for why this is the case. After the participants had created and presented their theories, they were informed that the information they were given at the start was untrue and that this entire event was just an experiment that had now come to its conclusion. But in fact, the experiment was not over and the researchers kept observing. What happened next was that the participants continued to defend their theories and explanation models for the false information that they had received, despite being informed that the information was false. Black Pigeon Speaks provides narratives in his videos, and these narratives are untrue, but often also incomplete. The previous mentioned videos, Why the West Hates and is Destroying Itself, and The Dangerous Precedent of Unbridled Charity, are two great examples of that. He produces incomplete assertions based on untruths. He never directly says that the world would be better off if the Nazis had won the Second World War, and never directly says that the Grenfell Tower fire is a scam, but the audience is guided into this conclusion. The previously mentioned experiment showed that we tend to hold on to beliefs and conclusions that are demonstrably false and untrue as long as we rationalize them ourselves. As long as we think up and construct theories explaining certain things to ourselves, it doesn't matter how demonstrably wrong they are. We tend to cling on to them in something psychologists call belief perseverance. This is something easily exploitable and often used in modern marketing. Ways to make you think, methods by which to make you rationalize through your own thought process that you need to buy and consume a certain product. And Black Pigeon Speaks expertly takes advantage of this by creating and being part of a parallel reality, the members and consumers of which are enticed to join into coming to their own conclusions by themselves. Made all the more evident by how he fills his videos with questions and suggestions to make you come to your own conclusions on the basis of the falsehoods he just presented.
Does any of this sound familiar to you?
Issue is whether or not there is a layer of these employees whose ambitions exceed
Wise man, I wonder why nobody is listening to him now.
Talk. Which way, British man? And without action, the sun is setting on everything Western people have inherited, including freedom of thought, conscience, and speech.
And what he has to say, if you carefully listen, also says a lot about his videos. If you close your eyes and just listen to his videos, ignoring the flashy animations, you will notice that what he says is most of the time the same thing he said before, that he repeats himself, that his use of adjectives and descriptive terms are fairly one-sided. But there is also something else that will stand out to you as it did to me. you will notice a distinctive change in language and tone between certain videos, that the spoken words and sentence structure of some videos doesn't match with others. And when you download the subtitles of those videos and check them with a plagiarism checker, you will notice why. The contents of his videos are sometimes not his. The Amerimex future of the United States is in large parts verbatim taken from an article by Samuel P. Huntington.
The U.S. was created in the 17th and 18th centuries by settlers who were overwhelmingly white British Protestants. Their values, institutions, and culture provided the foundation for and shaped the development of the United States up to the present day. And the large majority of Americans see creed as a crucial part of their national identity. The American creed can be recognized by its distinct Anglo-Protestant culture, which includes the rule of law, the right of dissent, individualism, the English language, and the Protestant work ethic. While contributions from other European groups that added and modified the social fabric, think spaghetti and St. Patrick's Day, for example, the fundamental core that attracted millions with the opportunity and freedom it made possible remained. But the U.S. looks unlikely to duplicate previous successes, and without any change in course, a united country with a single language and culture is slowly changing into a country of two peoples, two cultures, and two languages. One Anglo, the other Hispanic. One English, the other Spanish. Contemporary immigration from Latin America and Mexico specifically differs from past immigration due to a combination of several factors, including contiguity, scale, illegality, regional concentration, persistence, and historical precedents. No other immigrant group in U.S. history has asserted or could assert historical territorial claims of U.S. territory. Mexicans and Mexican Americans can and do. The size, persistence, and concentration of Hispanic immigration tends to perpetuate the use of Spanish through successive generations. Hispanic leaders are actively seeking to transform the United States into a bilingual society. English is not enough, argues Salvador Sato, president of the Spanish-American League Against Discrimination. We don't want a monolingual society. Similarly, Duke University literature professor and Chilean immigrant Ariel Dorfman asks, will this country speak two languages or merely one? And his answer, of course, is that it should speak two. The persistence of Mexican immigration into the United States reduces the incentives for cultural assimilation. Mexican Americans no longer think of themselves as members of a small minority who must accommodate the dominant group and adopt its culture. As their numbers increase, they become more committed to their own ethnic identity and culture. In 1917, former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt said, we must have but one flag. We must also have but one language. That must be the language of the Declaration of Independence, of Washington's farewell address, of Lincoln's Gettysburg speech, and second inaugural. By contrast, in June 2000, U.S. President Bill Clinton said, I hope very much that I'm the last president in American history who can't speak Spanish. And it was in May 2001, President George Bush celebrated Mexico's Cinco de Mayo national holiday by inaugurating the practice of broadcasting the weekly presidential radio address to the American people in both English and Spanish. If these trends continue, the cultural division between Hispanics and Anglos could replace the racial division between blacks and whites as the most serious cleavage in U.S. society. This transformation may not be all bad, but it will be the end of America as it's been known in any recognizable form for the past 3 centuries. But Americans should not allow this to happen unless they are sure that this new nation that's being created will be better than the one that it's replacing.
The surveillance society, what it means to you, is in large parts verbatim taken from various different publications. From the online privacy advocate and blogger Robin Doherty, from a Huffington Post article written by Leila Ravis, from a Guardian article written by Alex Preston, and from a Nigerian tech blogger.
And we are already self-censoring. A 2013 survey of U.S. writers found that after the revelations of the NSA's mass surveillance regime, 1 in 6 had avoided writing on topics they thought would subject them to surveillance, and a further 1 in 6 had seriously considered doing so. We've come to fear how our words, opinions, and beliefs may negatively affect our lives if they are misinterpreted or considered unpopular by the masses. Whether a joke is misconstrued or a political position deemed controversial, we have seen the negative effects this sharing can have on individuals' lives, and we've become frightened to share. What is the result of this? We've begun to eliminate the most powerful thing about sharing platforms. We've stopped using them for meaningful social debate because we don't want to risk our livelihoods on what we believe in. Many of us have become either weak or bipolar, strong and boisterous when our passions are ignited about the meaningless, or weak, perhaps even silent, when it comes to our deeper, more meaningful convictions. If it's not well favored by the masses, we just may shrink. Maybe it's that we understand very clearly the transaction. The internet is free and we wish to keep it that way, so corporations have worked out how to make money out of something we are willing to give them in return, our privacy. We have traded our privacy for the wealth of information the web delivers to us, the convenience of online shopping, and the global village of social media. Remaining unrecognizable and keeping conversations private online is immensely important. It's not just an issue for civil libertarians. Online privacy is crucial for crime victims, whistleblowers, dissidents, and anyone who would like their private matters to stay private. It doesn't matter if you have nothing to hide. Privacy is a right granted to individuals that underpins the freedom of expression, association, and assembly, all of which are essential for a free, democratic society.
As California goes, so goes the nation is partially verbatim taken from an article in American Greatness written by Spencer P. Morrison.
For decades, the adage went, as California goes, so goes the nation. In the past, this was a message of hope. Now, it's a stark warning. If California was an independent nation, it would be the 17th most unequal country in the world, just between Honduras and Guatemala. In comparison to the social democracies California attempts to ape, Canada, for example, is the 111th. and Norway the 153rd most unequal countries, that is, out of the 176 countries surveyed. First, it incentivizes poverty by rewarding the poor with government handouts that are at times more lucrative and more valuable than what could be obtained by employment. Second, welfare states are expensive. This means higher taxes and therefore slower economic growth and fewer job opportunities for everyone. Finally, like Sweden, like Germany, like the UK, like the Netherlands, California as a welfare state is a magnet for the poor. Whether through domestic migration or foreign immigration, poor people flock to places with generous welfare benefits. Of course, this makes perfect sense from those that seek welfare handouts. It makes absolutely none from the point of view of a taxpayer.
Why Women Destroy Civilizations and Other Uncomfortable Truths is partially verbatim taken from an article written by Bob Burkett in Ethica Politica.
And the sexual restraint they observed. Unwin's impetus for the project was to test the Freudian theory that civilizational progress was the product of repressed sexuality. He found that discipline in sexual matters appropriated social energy to more civilizational ends. It's very complicated, but for Unwin, the fabric of society was primarily sexual, and heterosexual monogamy was the optimal arrangement for the planning, building, protecting, and nurturing of the family. If enough heterosexual partners made a monogamous commitment, civilizational energy was directed toward promoting the finest societal foundation possible.
Full disclosure, I am subscribed to Black Pigeon Speaks, but not because I agree with him. I just like the way he presents his arguments. I like to challenge my positions and my opinions by listening to people who have different opinions and different positions.
It would be easy to laugh at his audience. Through most of his videos, Black Pigeon Speaks rants about the mainstream media and how untrustworthy and full of lies it is.
What used to be the choke points of information distribution, the news media as well as academia, are now at this point all but discredited. That it is a perfect example of the difference between the alternative media and the corporate-controlled mainstream media, news manufacturing echo chamber of the far left. And this should be yet another example for all with eyes to see and ears to hear of the duplicitous nature of the outfits that make up the mainstream media and the fake news. But to say that people have lost respect for it as well as most other outlets in the mainstream media would be an understatement.
His audience comes to him because they also reject the narratives of a mainstream media and trust the man who loudly and vocally condemns that media. And he then sells them that very media in form of stolen goods that he ripped from the very mainstream media which he claims to be dishonest. And people click and pay him for it. Because something looks shiny, it's easy to see his audience like moths into a glaring light. All of this sounds like a joke, almost like a plot to an amazing satire piece. But instead, take a step back. Look at this differently. I wish for you to take away mainly a few other things from this.
I just like the way he presents his argument.
It's all about presentation, not arguments. It's about ways to make you think. Black Pigeon Speaks may plagiarize out of laziness. In his subscriber milestone video, he also rips footage from the YouTuber Colossal is Crazy. But in the same video, he goes through the extra effort of putting a red color filter over footage of one of his critics to pronounce his acne. So Black Pigeon knows when to put effort into something to produce the kind of results that he wants from you. In a way, I almost have a weird sense of dread and respect for what he has achieved. In advertising, both for products and in politics, it is desired to make services, products, or views desirable for the consumer. The challenge is to make you think you want something that you might not even need, to agree with something you might not know anything about. And with that in mind, Black Pigeon Speaks has accomplished something amazing. By taking mainstream media articles, adding some animations, lens flare, effects, and a few specific ideological keywords, he has managed to take a product, namely mainstream media, and sell it to those who hate it, while telling them to hate it. And that, no matter how sleazy you may see his actions as, is somewhat impressive. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button and share it with your friends. But also consider checking out the YouTube channels of Liberal Sanity Project, Drillasta and David Charat. They helped me out massively by watching Black Pigeon Speaks videos with me. Here are their channels and their Twitters. And especially I'd like to thank Andrew, a psychologist and one of many academic researchers who helped me make videos by providing learning materials and explanations. This is his Twitter. You can support this channel financially through Patreon or PayPal, and if you wish to take part in the discussions about my video with me, you can join my Discord server here. At the end of this video, I guess I would like to encourage you to not only question those who present to you here on this platform what they claim to be truths, but to also question your own receptiveness for them, to try and see through attempts to guide you into believing things, buying things, thinking of things, thinking in certain ways, supporting things that you may not even agree with or need. Lies by themselves are kind of worthless and easy to see through. If you want someone to believe lies, you have to present those lies. After all, lies, false narratives, conspiracies, and ideologies,
like cake mixes and cookware, electricity and minced onions. These were things you had to be sold on.